morning, students. We resume yesterday's lecture. We had stopped at when we discussed what was the contribution of the reformer Jyotirao Phule in the fighting back against discrimination against the lower caste people. He compared their plight to the plight of the people who were fighting back in America. Those were the blacks who were considered to be the slaves, where the blacks were brought in to American land and they were made slaves over there, and the working conditions were very bad. They used to work from dawn to dusk, and the remuneration paid also was very, very less. So how they fought back and how did they gain their independence from the slavery system almost, he compared the plight of the caste discrimination with theirs, thus bringing this particular topic onto an international platform of discussion. So next, we had spoken about, we learnt about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, how he promoted the lower caste people to enter the temples and bring an end to the taboo that the lower caste people couldn't enter the temple, or not could they use any, nor would they use, drink water from the wells, or use the water from the wells of the temples as well. This did create a repercussion. Now we were talking about maximum over here compared to North India as well as South India, but now this particular last topic, the non-Brahmin movement, we will take up something from South India, what happened over there, who was the reformer, his name, he was popularly known as Periyar. Now, as Phule had given a particular ideology that these people who call themselves as Brahmins did not belong to this motherland in the very first place. They were Aryans who had come from central India, and they had subjugated the people over here. They had brought them forcibly under control, and those who had been forcibly brought under control were considered as the lower caste people, and they were not treated properly. So this particular thought process was so logically given that it spread like wildfire, and even Periyar promoted the same thing, saying that those who consider themselves to be the uppermost and the most powerful sect of the society, and those who discriminate on the basis of caste, don't even belong to the same motherland. They don't, this particular land doesn't belong to them. They are outsiders. He did promote this. He did even promote the thought that we have to start off a self-respect movement. Why could he do it is a very good question. He belonged to a middle class family, but he had education. He was educated, he had a little bit of wealth as well, and he had the power of speech. He could spread his ideology throughout the country by his writings. He could awaken people by his write-ups over there based on this particular discrimination and how they need to protect their self-respect and fight back against the discrimination which is taking place. Periyar joined the National Congress also, but he was disgusted at one occasion where there was a meeting which was called, and in that meeting the laying of chairs was in accordance to the caste system. Those who belonged to the upper caste in Congress, their chairs were laid right at the beginning, and those who belonged to the lower caste, their chairs were laid at the back. He got so disgusted by this particular point that he left Congress, and he started his own movement called the Self-Respect Movement, and he did something remarkable as well. When you talk about Hindu ideology, the basic ideologies come from your sacred text, or I would say the stories which are very famous, like the Ramayana, you have Mahabharata. So you have these particular stories from where certain times this particular thing has been spoken about like you must be knowing about Karna. So he was like Sudra Putra, he was called. All these things come from the text only. So he actually counter questioned the existence of that particular uh, uh, practices which were involved, which the Brahmins gave a logic that God has only made this particular caste discrimination, wherein it was not. So he counter questioned the existence of this particular thought process that this discrimination had been created by God Himself, which had nothing to do with the textbooks. It just said the prevalent pattern what existed in the society then, and then how the people fought back. They are good texts, they teach us good. How we interpret is wrong. So this is how he brought into limelight the problem, and he promoted the thought process that this particular discrimination has to come to an end. So do you think if people, these reformers were speaking so much against the caste discrimination, would the higher society or would the Brahmins would keep quiet? No, they never kept quiet as well. So the upper caste leaders, we had the lower caste leaders, they had the upper caste leaders as well. The upper caste leaders also came into action. They called dharma sabhas. Sanatan Dharma Sabha, 2, 3 more names have been given in your textbook. They call these Dharma Sabhas, in which they propagated the idea of continuing with the caste discrimination process, because like I said earlier also, they were convinced that God has made them untouchables, and we need to follow the path of God. That was the logic they gave, and they did fight back. So it was a tussle of words, it was a war of words, but any sensible human being who has received education in the right way, and his ideologies have been trained to be good right from the beginning, right from the inception of the education, then he will definitely know what's right and what is wrong. So this is how reformers continuously struggle and try to bring into limelight the plight of women also then, because those who were considering themselves to be the most powerful also, like they did not consider women also to be a part, like I would say, a very important part of their lives. They, like I would say, like untouchables, only women also were deprived of their rights. So the whole chapter synopsis, if we have to talk about, so to summarize them, many movements, many sabhas, many associations have been formed. The Aligarh movement, the Brahmo Samaj was formed. You had Vivekananda, this thing ashram coming up. Like these had ideologies. These particular reforms had ideologies. Now let's see, to summarize the chapter, what are these ideologies and how these reformers helped us. So I've written, I would say, the entire process of the reform would be summarized in these four parts. They promoted, the reformers promoted by their actions, critical and analytical thinking. Critical what? So if you have to say something is good or bad, you should think in that process. You should analyze that particular topic and then think, why is it good and why is it bad. So thinking was promoted by them so that people use their brains, just not follow, like it's called herd instinct. In Hindi it's called bhed chal. Ek ne bola to we will follow. It shouldn't be like that. You should have your own thought process. What is correct, what is wrong, you need to analyze and critically evaluate what is the outcome of it. Second one was promoted the freedom of expression. They promoted this feeling, and do not stop yourself if you very strongly feel about something from expressing it. If you keep your thought processes limited to yourself, then how are you going to bring a change in the society? Like, if you talk about civics, we say family is the basic unit of the society. That means the smallest unit and the basic unit. So change has to come from a family. If you don't speak out your ideologies in the family only, they will not go and propagate in the society. So that was there, that you had to use discretionary, the discretionary power of freedom of expression, and let the people know what's correct and what's wrong. They have their own analytical mind. They will process for it themselves and then understand whether what you're saying is correct or not. Next, promoted the eradication of evil practices. We had so many. We had sati system, we had child marriage system, the widows wouldn't be able to marry. We had so many evil practices in our society. I would not say Britishers did only wrong to us, but they did good to our society as well by bringing an end to these evil practices. And how these evil practices could have been brought to an end is the basic question, that is only and only through educating them. If you would educate them the same way as you were dealing with earlier the Pathshala system, then definitely you would see no change. When the European education was brought in, a little bit upliftment of ideas did take place, and then people started thinking in a different way, their perspective broadened, and then we could see a drastic change in the thinking process of the people, where so many reformers came together and made India a better place to live for all the category of people involved. The last one was promoted education. So education shouldn't be only and only related to books. There are vocational training, the ideological changes in a person, and then bringing a very constructive change in the society was, I would say, the entire synopsis to be brought into action. So this was the way the reformers worked and tried to bring a change. It was not overnight that it happened. It took a lot of time, because it had taken a lot of time for these things to settle down permanently in our society. Till now we see traces, but it took time there for them to bring a change, and it is taking time for us also to continue with the change. And we will change the society for a better one. And how this particular reform promoted the thought of getting independence from the Britishers will be discussed in the next chapter. Give the chapter thorough reading. There are certain reforms which have been spoken about, there are certain movements which have been spoken about, certain associations which have been spoken about in the last 2 pages of the chapter. Read them thoroughly, mark the main points for yourself. Thank you, dear.